Series.
No, but some. I might have to still chat.
And himself.
Hey, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's not facing, but it's.
Yeah.
He was the.
I was having a conversation with the
He was the head of.
Seaside Planning Commission president.
He's cloud engineering.
But since our last meeting, you know, they approved, put in
Oh, okay.
another complex there in the quarry.
He retired from it, and he had originally no intention of going back to work, and then he just became.
There's no quarry there by the high school.
Where Elon Musk is putting all these spaceship parts.
I mean, it's a good guy.
But I was talking to her about it, so the planning commission, we're serving over 100 units right across from each other basically, to come all out in one-on-one at one place, that real nice, where the bridges and everything else in 24th and all that. And so I said, is that good planning? He says, well, I'm going to petition to have the speed limit dropped from Pacific Way into 12 down to 35.
Oh.
So I'm letting you know, we intend to lower the speed limit.
Good luck with taking that to ODOT.
It's not easy.
Well, having served on both PSP commissions for here and in Seaside, you're absolutely right.
I mean, I tried to get him to lower it in, when there literally was a school immediately adjacent to the highway. And, there was no, like, there was a crosswalk. And they were like, our goal is to move freight as efficiently as possible. No, so
No, I mean.
that's just how they analyze
No, I
things,
know.
or that's how
I
they
look at
traditionally
the
analyze
velocity capacity, I'm going, no, they're not going velocity to slow that down.
Well, not only that, but first they have to do the thing, then they have to do a steady speed.
I'm just letting my forewarn.
Yeah.
I'm forewarned. If someone comes along someday and says, oh, we're gonna learn.
They're down to 20 miles an hour, yeah, that's awesome.
Hey, Ben?
Great.
How about you?
Good. Although my wife is gonna be rocking 10 days, and another week to go. So I'm gonna back her for a long time.
What's going on?
She's on a girls' trip. On all of them are up there.
Here. 2 weeks and a half, you're here. Actually.
Yeah.
Are you here for?
Scott in regards and watching yesterday, and all that, right? Oh, for me, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't love being a bachelor, but I can handle it.
What's happening?
Is this what, is true? Oh, okay. Okay.
It's pretty good.
No, that's not the sports, and Michigan football's back. That's the best.
Are you the high state guys that have, that's what I
It's happening.
Oh, yeah, when Michigan's done, it's.
I thought when they got knocked out.
And this description is what normally be.
Sorry. Because they were for 20
I know.
Yeah, good night, yeah.
Okay, okay.
No, and we can check on my notes, right?
It's, you like it?
You know.
No, my wife works.
No.
I had no affiliation, it works in.
Okay.
She is in medical school. PhD medicine. And so, genetics and genetic counseling.
And remind everyone if they need to speak tonight or they're not an applicant and they want to say something to sign out in the hallway and
Sorry, I got
to turn your cell phones off or to airplane mode or whatever. Are you the applicant?
We are.
Okay, you don't need to sign in. This is for anyone else who is, just wants to make comments. We have people that come and just like to talk to us sometimes. Not very often. We're all here.
Thank you.
Nice.
Garrett is online.
Garrett's online, okay. You realize I could not see anything this far.
No, I think Garrett did.
The Angelina
We'll fix that.
decided this room shrunk. We don't know how you did it, but you shrunk the size of this room.
We've had a lot more people in there than this.
I know, but we can't anymore because you shrunk the size of it.
Remembering back to the days of short communication.
That's good.
The pickleball one had a lot of audience.
Yeah.
Pickleball was small.
Remember the elk night when they were all out there?
Oh, yeah,
No, I don't know anything about that.
will you check your pages? I think I messed up the photocopying and didn't do it to, the one that was just handed to you.
You should have
Yeah.
seen it.
Yeah, this is incomplete,
Oh.
and I'm gonna print you out another
That'll
one.
probably be on.
I didn't even look at this.
I just put it on.
Okay.
Okay, it's 6 o'clock. I get that.
You know, what was I gonna be doing it? It was from my wife.
Ready?
Yes.
Yes.
Ray? You got it on, you're recording? It's 6 o'clock, I call the order, the, what day? May 8th, 2025, Deer Planning Commission. We, all, commissioners are present.
Okay.
Our land use attorney, Angelina and Chad, and I believe Garrett is here too, so we're all here today. So you have a consent agenda, you have the minutes from March 13th, the financial report from April 30th, and we don't have any correspondence. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented?
Move.
Who's moved? Oh, I'm sorry, I can't see you down there, Russ.
Move.
Oh, Russ. Hey, Russ has moved. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, John has seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye, please.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. No nays, okay. All right, we have reports. From the staff, first, Chad, do you have anything to report?
I'm gonna need just a minute, let's see if anybody else does first, and then.
Okay, Angelina, do you have anything? No, Garrett, do you have anything? Is Garrett?
I actually don't have anything in particular to report tonight.
Okay,
Peter?
that's okay. Peter, do you have anything?
No, but eventually we're going to have more of our buildable and inventory housing needs analysis, so Garrett and I are continuing to monitor that process. And we'll see what happens.
Okay, well, that sounds very exciting.
Yes, all of it.
Okay, so Chad, do you want,
So close.
Oh,
okay, yes, just a few things to report.
Okay.
On your desk will be a little report on the tree ordinance, as we've been working with it for a couple of months now. So put together a document so you can see how many tree permits we've given, some of the details about how things are working, and time spent on that. So just thought you might be curious. I gave that to the city council last night in their city council meeting. Water rights application has been submitted for the city of Deerheart, so we are still working on the project of adding more water rights to Deerheart, so we no longer have to buy water from Warrenton. And that has been submitted, and we're waiting for feedback from Water Resources Division. What's important is save the dates. So some of you in here may be involved, but we have the budget meeting Tuesday, May 13th at 6 p.m. here in the chamber. We have a public safety building community meeting number 4, Monday, May 19th, 6 to 7:30 at the Deerheart Volunteer Fire Department. This is going to be where we present, the architects will be presenting some of the drawn up plans for the public safety building, the 2 options that the public picked during the previous town hall meetings. They will present how we got here, what's driving the costs. They will show what the costs are, show what some of the design is, take questions and answer. Then we'll be breaking the residents into smaller groups at tables with those plans, with those costs, so that they can discuss them, go through them, get some questions. Then we'll bring it back together, have a discussion as a group over there. And so this will be a really interesting meeting. This is where the price starts coming out, or the proposed price for those plans, that, we've gone through with the architects, with, our project management group, and with, project estimators. So that again is, Monday, May 19th, 7:30. We also have the Gearhart Firefighters Ball coming up on Saturday, May 24th at 8 p.m. at GBFD. All the traditional games are going to be there, a good place to get your Porter Zip sweatshirts and t-shirts. We'll have some blackjack, so come in and use some money there. The fire department uses all of those funds to buy some of the emergency equipment they use on all of their calls. And it is a good time. And that's all that I have to report for now.
Okay, thank you, Chad. Do any commissioners have something to say tonight? Nothing, all right. Do I have any visitors that want to talk about anything that's not related to the agenda? Do I have anyone online? I've lost anyone that can look at line to tell me.
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Just double check here. No, ma'am.
All right. Okay, moving forward then, we have two public hearings today. So I'm gonna break your minute. Peter, do I read the statement on the public hearing for a tree application still?
Yeah, I mean, that's how the council set it up, so.
Okay, I just wanted to verify, because you all love her to read it so much. Okay, so the first public hearing that I need to open is file 25-03 tree major tree permit. And the applicant requests approval of the major tree removal permit to remove 2 trees exceeding 55 inches in circumference from the property at 101 South Cottage Avenue. So I need to read a disclosure statement, and what I'm going to say is that we will also have a public hearing on the zoning text amendment. I will not read it a second time for that one. So I will just, you've heard it, when we come back to the second one, then I will ask you again if you had any contact and those questions that I asked. Is that okay? Yes, thank you. Okay. All persons testifying shall be deemed parties to the application and must provide their name and full mailing address if they wish to be notified of the decision, continuance, appeals, or other procedural actions required by the code. The city zoning code specifies applicable criteria to be relied upon in making a decision. Those criteria and findings of fact are in the city staff report. Public testimony should be limited to those criteria and findings of fact or to other city or state land use standards that the person testifying believes apply to proposed land use action. Failure to raise an issue in person or in writing with sufficient detail to afford the hearing body and parties to the hearing an opportunity to respond to that issue precludes appeal to the city council or land use board of appeals or to seek damages in circuit court due to condition of approval. Before the conclusion of the initial evidentiary hearing, any participant may ask the planning commission for an opportunity to present additional relevant guidance. Additional relevant evidence, arguments, or testimony that is within the scope of the hearing. The hearing's body shall grant the request by scheduling a date to finish the hearing, a continuance to a time and date certain, or by leaving the record open for additional evidence, argument, or testimony pursuant to ORS 197.763 6A through E. Commissioners, and only referring to this first public hearing on the tree permit, is there any conflict of interest, ex parte contact, or personal bias?
I visited the site.
Okay, did anyone else visit the site? Emerson visited, John visited, Don visited, I can't read. Everyone visited. All of us visited. We all went and looked at the trees. Okay.
Jenny, before we go on,
Yes.
asked similar questions before, and I think the answer has always been this is not sufficient to recuse myself. But
Yes.
my sister-in-law lives across the street from this property and knows the owners.
Okay.
Um,
No, only thing you need to declare, I think you'll have a personal bias because of that relationship.
I think I would.
All right.
I would.
The standard for bias in Oregon is incredibly high. So if you've already made up your mind and that you're not unwilling to consider changing your mind based off of evidence that presented today, then you would be biased. If you're willing to listen to evidence that presented and keep an open mind as far as the result, then you don't have bias. And so the one case that actually found that the counselor had, this was I was on a planning commission, but had bias, was the guy said, I was elected to make sure this project happened. So the Court of Appeals looked at that and are like, yeah, you know, in other instances, including the siting of a liquefied natural gas facility, where one of the actually county commissioners in this county had previously been the plaintiff against LNG projects and ran on a platform opposing LNG projects, but said he was willing to consider new evidence and change his mind and then voted against it. The Court of Appeals said that he wasn't biased because people are allowed to have opinions. They just need to verify that they're willing to listen to evidence to change their mind. So if you've already made up your mind on this application and they couldn't say anything that would change it, then you should recuse yourself from it. If you're willing to listen to evidence, even if your sister-in-law is very fond of the people or whatever it is, then you should be able to hear this.
Okay, given that guidance, I will withdraw my recusal.
Okay. All right, moving ahead. Where am I at now? Okay, I need to ask the audience, are there any challenges to the commission's ability to make an impartial decision? All right, not saying anything. All right, Garrett, it's time for your staff report, please.
All right, thank you. Okay, so this is your all's first major tree removal permit application since City Council amended the zoning ordinance with new exceptions and protections for trees depending on the circumstances. And so in this application, the applicant is wants to remove 3 trees, and 2 of those meet the criteria that the zoning ordinance calls a 55-inch tree. So 2 of the 3 are large enough that a major tree removal permit is required to remove them. And a major tree removal permit is a planning commission decision. And the notice, the hearing, the findings that we'll make afterwards follow the pattern of a conditional use, just to help orient you to that. So this is the decision you're making. It doesn't go to City Council. Like a lot of other applications, staff has latitude to decide what kind of application is required. And so we said a major tree removal permit is required, but you can also make findings or decide that this qualifies for one of the exceptions that's listed in the ordinance, for example, even if we didn't do that as staff. So in any case, the applicant wants to remove 2 trees that require a major tree removal permit. The zoning ordinance lists out a few exception criteria that are on the second page of the staff report. And staff didn't find that those seemed applicable based on the information we had available. And then the staff report also provides the decision criteria, and there's 3. Basically, any one of these conditions needs to be met in order to approve a major tree removal permit. The trees pose a safety hazard. the trees are diseased, or they need to be removed for solar access, or because they deposit needles or debris on rooftops. And there's some extra qualifying language that goes along with that third potential criteria that you could make a finding on. So again, staff reviewed the application and at that time didn't see, it didn't look like any of the criteria were met. Since we wrote the staff report, the applicant has provided additional information in a document titled, excuse me, just looking for it here. This is 8 pages and it's titled Tree Assessment for Removal Permit Proposal. And this report documents that the trees have been trimmed and will continue to need to be trimmed by the power utility to avoid hazard situations with the power lines. It has a note about the flagpole. It documents that the trees are too close to the fire pit, and so having a fire in the fire pit with those trees at that location would be a safety hazard. And that fire pit is that's not just like some rocks that are tossed in a ring in the yard. That's it looks like a established landscape feature that is part of a patio, a gravel patio that's laid out intentionally there. So it's not just a matter of tossing the rocks a little bit further away from the trees for a new fire pit. And that report also notes some tree health issues related to chains that have grown into the tissue of the tree, and that's girdling the tree and causing splitting in the bark. Okay, so this is the first major tree removal permit. Staff want to give you all some sort of wide latitude to interpret the code, and it is your decision, not ours. And as we learn more about how you see this kind of thing, we could become more decisive in issuing exceptions. But ultimately, we just wanted to give you all of this information and let you deliberate over it. And we're basically not making a recommendation one way or the other here, but there's a lot of interesting issues to consider and how they relate to the approval criteria. And I'm happy to answer questions. I don't think we had any testimony from neighbors or other parties. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you, Derek. Peter, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to point to ambiguity in the code that whether or not you want to weigh on that this evening, whether you think it's applicable or later on, and that is the solar access can be interpreted 2 ways. One would be solar access as being sun to the yard and the house. The other way would be solar access being sun to solar panels. So someone could say, well, we're going to install solar panels, and so we want maximum sun. Someone could also say, due to the plants that we're planning on planting or the garden that we want to grow, we want to maximize sunshine to the yard. And so in this case, and it might be applicable here because the page that says no clearance trees block ability to fly flag on pole. Also, and maybe it appears that the sun is directly behind the tree on the second photo. And so it does, at least at that time of the day, it appears that that tree is blocking access to the sun. So the others, there's a lot less ambiguity in, but in my mind, that criteria to me seems a bit ambiguous.
Thank you. All right, it is now time for the applicant to give their presentation.
Great.
Please state your name, your address, and talk to us.
Great, wonderful. I'll let you start.
Um, We bought,
Address.
oh wait, yeah, listen, Michelle. McGinnis.
Typically, she's the one that said that to me,
Okay,
so
I know, I'm Michelle, this is Brett McGinnis, our address here is 101 South Cottage, Fairburn. And we purchased the house 4 years ago, 3 years ago.
22.
Have made considerable improvements to the interior and exterior of the home, and now we're working on the yard. We love it here. It is not our full-time residence yet. We intend it to be when we get closer to retirement. And we would like to remove these trees so that we can continue to do the improvements. And they're not very happy trees. I mean, there's the health issues noted in the report by the arborist. And Pacific Power will continue to, they say prune them, I say chop them, so that we basically now just have large stumps. Because the tree foliage, for lack of a better word, starts about where, not too far from where the power lines are and goes up. So we are hoping that we're able to remove them and replant trees in that spot that will be easier to manage under the power lines, not drop debris on our house. Provide a safety issue with limbs and also, as mentioned before, let a little more sun into the rest of the property. Okay, can you add to that?
She crushed it. So, no, I completely agree. I think part of the challenge is with the trees and the condition that they're in, and if you have had a chance to truly see them, get up close and so on, and you want to walk onto the property and do that, you're welcome to take a look, as well. But they obviously are challenged, and especially the tree that has the chain that's been growing into it. It's not.
We did not put there.
No, it's been there for decades. Right, and but at the same time, you can tell by the growth of those 3 trees in particular, it's not normal as what you see here in Gerhard with other pine trees, where you truly have healthy growth, you have a healthy trunk, you have limbs that will split off of the trunk and so on. Where this has the trunk, these have a trunk, come up, and then they have 3, 4, maybe 5 other trunks that then grow from there and go up to the next level and so on. I think they're gonna be a problem long term. And we are not just looking to remove the trees, we're looking to replant. And that's ultimately what we want to do. And we want to replant with a tree that is fits properly with the community. Craig Keast, who is our landscape architect, is the person that's in charge of the job for us. And we'll probably look at a tree. The trees will grow to about 15 feet, maybe 15 to 20 feet high. But provides a little bit of a canopy, but at the same time gives us the sun in that part of the backyard that we would love to have on the long summer days, which are few and far in between to the balance of the year. And continue to enjoy our property and enjoy this wonderful town where we got married in.
Can I find,
You may.
can I get you to state your name and your first and last name and your address?
Yeah, Michelle McGinnis, 101 South Cottage Avenue in Gerhart, 97138.
And then
And Brett, Sean, Michael McGinnis, 101 South Cottage, Gerhart, Oregon, 97138, sorry. I keep thinking of it.
Oh, they did? Oh, you
No, that's okay.
We all don't listen sometimes, don't we?
Yeah, I hear that all the time.
Okay.
I said it really fast.
You combine your names. It's like a unit here. That's what I have.
Okay, are there any questions for the applicant from our commissioners at this point? Yes, Don.
I have a few questions. Do you know what type of trees are there, those trees are right now, those 3 trees?
Pine.
Yeah, the pine, but I don't know the specific.
The specific, I'm not an expert at all, but they look like shore pines, which some of us are familiar with. Not exactly the same like spruce pines that are more old and stuff. You know why the chains are in the trees, what that was for?
I suspect because there's a post that's sticking out of the yard, it's probably a 6x6 post that at one point, a previous owner of the property probably ran a hammock through there, because you can see it's got an eye bolt where you could connect something like that, and someone probably had a hammock around that. There's a couple of old bungee cords that were stuck to it as well that we were able to remove, but the chain itself.
It's in there.
Yeah.
And that the report says it can cause girdling, which is bad, right? This reduces the health of the tree.
Right.
And it also looks like from the photos that they have split trunks, which you just described, which also can lead to future dangerous type of things, right? Yeah. Okay. And then I also saw your plan, so you're gonna plant some trees specifically in that same spot, but then also go around the yard.
Around the front part of the yard as well.
Okay, that's good, thank you.
Any other commissioners? John?
Yes, I just have one question, relationship to the pine needles. One of the criteria could be, or is, in the actual requirement here, is that if needles are being deposited on the roof, are these trees don't seem to be that close to the roof, but are you getting needles on the roof?
We do, because we get that southern blow from the weather fronts that come in oftentimes, so we do. I clean out the gutters pretty often. They get
Are
pretty.
you getting needles on the gutters?
Oh, yeah. It plugs the spout and so on as well, but I mean, yeah. I don't complain.
Okay, Eric?
So in the report, they describe the chain causes girdling and that's form of strangulation. But it doesn't describe what an included bark seam is, what that actually represents as far as the disease state. Did the arborist describe that at all to you?
Yeah, no, they didn't.
It was just looking it up, I have it online if you like.
Sure.
Perfect. Included bark seam refers to a structural defect in trees where bark becomes embedded within the junction of two branches or stems. This typically occurs when two limbs grow closely together at a narrow V-shaped angle, preventing the normal development of a strong interlocking wood grain between them. Instead of forming solid wood connections, bark is trapped inside the union, creating a weak point in the tree's structure. It matters because included bark seems to compromise the structural integrity of trees, since bark lacks the strength of wood. It seems to act as wedges, increasing the risk of limbs splitting apart, especially under stress from wind, snow, and such.
Great. Thank you, Google.
Thank you.
Russ, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. Well, I just, not the, I understand the damage to the trees that are there, but the planning or the plan for the future trees, if we approve your permit, it seems like there's so many trees. I mean, is it an overkill or is that what your arborist or your architect?
So, yeah, so we thought the same thing.
We asked
And Craig is very convincing and luckily enough for us, we were able to see a house recently that he has done in Portland, and the canopy that it creates is absolutely beautiful. And so we love that because it gives us some privacy from the house level itself, in particular with the street, as well as the light pole that's out in front of the house also at the same time. And so we're very excited. We think it'll be fantastic. The trees that are going in are not large in trunk. They're more of a thinner type tree that actually has 3 or 4 actual trunks that come out of its planting. And the ones that we'll put in will already be 10 feet tall.
And
So,
they'll be dispersed over the entire, both sides of cottage and A.
Yeah.
So,
and then there'll be
it's not that.
there'll be a pathway underneath.
He's
and some
a very
ground.
qualified fellow, I just,
Yeah.
you might
layman's feedback.
We have a lot of those conversations
Yes.
with Craig, yeah, I mean, we're not, we're not professionals, that's for sure.
We love being on that road because it's so much fun, but we do want to have a little bit of privacy. And maybe a little noise control too at the same time.
Do you have any questions, Jim?
No, I don't.
No questions, okay. All right, thank you. So, are there any proponents here? Are there any proponents on the line? Stacy?
No.
Do we see any opponents? Do we see any neutral comments? No. Okay, did you have anything else to share? No.
So, yeah.
All right, then I will close the public hearing at this point. And now it is time for our discussion. As is my usual habit, I will start over with Dawn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate that. I guess this is a question for Chad, but in the tree ordinance performance report, is this application the April 14th? Note in here,
I'm not sure. No, I don't think so.
request.
I don't think I included this one in there until the bottom where I talked about where I talked about this meeting in particular.
Okay, so that's
Talking
not
April
that one.
14th.
Yes,
That we thought it's been determined.
No, that's another one.
so I guess my question about that one is, it was denied by, I presume, staff. And is that then their prerogative to come before the planning commission?
They were just notified today,
Okay,
so I'm not sure.
so that's totally separate.
Where do you see it in the line?
It says mixed up.
Oh, I
But it's
see.
like, so-
Okay.
Can I also ask, how much does it cost to file a major tree removal permit in the city right now?
Zero.
$0, okay? I think, with especially the planting of additional trees and the landscaping and location of the trees and my experience with those nature, those trees in that way, that I would think this would be an approval.
Okay, John, did you have any comments?
Yeah, I guess two, and legal advice would be helpful here as well. This is something that's come up before about precedent. This application doesn't really have any reasons that conform to the requirements of the permit, except for the solar, which they didn't even feature in their application. But we could infer that there's a solar implication here. However, like Don, I think it's gonna end up being better for the community to have nicer trees and more of them. And the canopy will be lovely on that street, so I'm in favor of doing this, but it doesn't seem to meet the criteria that we've established. So I always get concerned about precedent in that regard.
Well, so I think that there are a couple of things, that. And it's how are we going to interpret these words? So, they say they have a fire pit, they say it's in close proximity to the trees. We can have a photo of it, would it be unreasonable to think that, embers from that could go into the trees and cause an issue? I mean, I think that a reasonable planning commission could say, yeah. And I think a reasonable planning commissioner could say, not in my mind, I think that the odds of that happening are low. So one of it is that's why when you're sitting as a quasi judicial capacity, you're sitting as a judge. And what you're doing is you're applying the facts as they present them today to our standards, which are brand new. They testified that they'd like lower tree canopy, but they also would like some sun over the top. So we don't just consider what they say in the application. They also, the reason they get to present today is an opportunity to flush this out to give you more information about the power company and the trimming. You know, that's another thing. Having power lines through those trees, not a best practice normally. That can create safety issues. A lot of people think that the power lines and adjacent to trees are what cause, you know, some of the catastrophic forest fires in Southern Oregon. So I can say that that every property is going to be different, that every scenario is going to be different. It's unlikely that you're going to have another tree that's girded with the chain and has that inclusion issue with the bark. I don't know how many trees there are going to be where at 4.5 feet, the trunk seems large, but then it's just kind of branches going off of it that are much smaller. So if this had been like, if that branch had happened a foot lower, you know, we wouldn't be having the conversation because all three of those trunks would have been below the 4.5 feet. So, but I think if we're going, again, you're sitting quasi-judicial, so acting as the judge, you're going back to those trees. Does the proximity to the type of tree and proximity to the fire pit create a safety issue? That's for you to determine. Does the proximity to the power lines create a safety issue, given their testimony about, you know, the wind and all of that? And then to the third criteria, they provided additional testimony this evening. One is about the needles dropping and him having to get them out of the roof regularly with the trees that they're planting, that they're not needles, they're going to be leaves, and that's a different process. And then the issue of solar, if you interpret that solar to mean sunshine to the yard, and in my parents' yard, their neighbors planted trees to block the view. And then another neighbor cut down those trees, and the amount of moisture that their yard gets is dramatically different since that occurred. So the amount of sun that a yard gets can, yeah, I mean, that's a way that you could say that they've said that they want more sun, and they testified that this new plan will give them more sun while also providing a canopy. If you want to define solar access in that manner, that's something that you can reasonably do. What's most important to us is, to the extent that you believe one or more of these is applicable, you would just say, I would be very concerned about a fire pit within that proximity to the trees, and that fire pit looks like it's of a permanent nature. It wouldn't be reasonable to expect them to move. So I think the safety mitigation would be applicable. If you think it's applicable. If you think it's not applicable, again, you know, for instance, with the solar, you could say, I would interpret the solar to mean solar access to a solar panel. They don't have a solar panel, so I wouldn't think that's applicable. So again, I think that you have flexibility in order to decide this a variety of ways. And then as far as consistency went, if there was another applicant that had a fire pit that was in similar proximity to trees of a similar nature, you could say, well, in the past, we've said that fire pits that are this close to a tree could create a fire hazard. And so I think that, you know, we'd say that this evening. If you think that the trees and the power lines constitute a public safety issue, and I think they testified that the power company does, because the power company's trimming them, you could say that. And then if you have another applicant with limbs immediately adjacent to a power line in ways that make the power company have to trim them, you could again point to this. And if those aren't applicable, but like the chain, you think that creates its own safety concerns, and I can see how someone could come to that conclusion. That's a unique factor that's probably going to be unique to this application as compared to ones we'll get later.
Thank you, Pete.
Anything else, John?
No.
Emerson?
Yeah, before tonight's meeting, I was trying to figure out how I could possibly go with this thing. But the photos that have been supplied tonight, at least in my mind, establish that the trees have structural defects. And those structural defects are likely to cause a fire hazard or a safety hazard in the future if they don't already now. There's one other thing about one of these photos, which I think is kind of interesting, and it's about the power lines. And it's this one here, which would be it's a mandatory clearance window for power lines that are getting up above the darker line cable, which comes through the tree, and it's based on what I witnessed today when I looked at it.
Yes.
That cable runs right through those branches. That's not a power line, that's actually cable TV, but any installer trying to get in there and trying to run a line to somebody would find that to be a safety hazard. So I'm a yes for the.
Russ?
Yeah, I have a question about, I'm confused about the 55 and the 37. And to the little handout you gave us all. The 414 incident, which you said is maybe coming to us, they claimed that they denied two of the trees because they were over 55. Is over 55 a more important tree in this permit than a 37? Is that the city council's intent?
Staff had some questions after the ordinance was approved, so we had a work session to discuss that very issue, and what they determined, albeit not unanimously, but the majority of the group did determine that trees that are 55 inches and above could not be cut down unless they met the criteria for a major permit. And that was their intention when they voted for the ordinance. So 55-inch trees and above, unless they're diseased, dead, dying, or some of these other solar access issues, cannot be cut down.
Cannot be cut down?
Cannot be cut down.
Oh.
And that's why we're here today. One of the trees was approved to be cut down because it's under the 55 inches.
Yeah.
But I could not approve the other two because I, with my untrained eyes looking at it, seeing some of the things that I see, but I'm not one to make a determination on the future of a healthy tree. So then the applicant went and talked to a arborist or a tree cutter, tree specialist of some sort, and that person provided those pictures.
So is if over 55 cannot be cut down, then what's our? I mean, to me, those trees should be cut down.
Then you have the criteria set out in the ordinance, which is included in the council packet. And you can make a decision that those trees might need to come down as per requested based on that criteria.
So if you believe that they're creating a safety issue, and frankly, the most likely criteria that will be applicable are either the public safety or the solar access / needles. There's certainly comments about the health of the trees, but I don't know that there's really evidence in the record that could yield a determination they're diseased, but they don't have to be all three. They only have to be one of the three criteria in order for you to give them approval.
Yeah, no, I understand all that. And to me, the 55 in that particular instance, those trees have already branched from one trunk to two. I mean, they're not significant trees. I'm speaking in broader here.
Right, so I interpreted, part of the reason we did the work session is because Garrett and I interpreted the ordinance completely differently. I interpreted it as if it was 37, it was less than 37, it wasn't a tree. And if it was between 37 and whatever, unless it was a heritage tree, you could cut 3 down. Garrett interpreted it as, you could cut down 3 trees that were between 37 and 55. If it was over 55, you could not unless it met one of the criteria. We took it to council to get an interpretation. They interpreted it in the same manner that Garrett had interpreted it, which of course they can do that. And so then it does create a far more robust process for both the applicants and for us and you. And then, so then it comes down to are any of these 3 exceptions that would allow you to get to a yes applicable? And you're gonna need to weigh the evidence and make that determination. And then we're continuing to have conversations with the city council about whether there would be additional exceptions that they would like to put in, because as you guys can see from these pictures, if these are over 55 inches in diameter, then a lot of trees in Gerhardt are over 55 inches in diameter.
Yeah, I agree. I think there has to be something more subjective than those three criteria. I mean, I think you, as you stated, we can go with the solar, we can go with the tree, the power lines. We have a reason to allow them to be cut down, but I think in a broader picture, it's a flawed permit. The city's permit is flawed. I mean, the writing of the permit.
And that's
Anyway,
for the city council to,
I digress, so, yeah, I'm done.
okay, Eric?
Well, you know, what I see is that the application itself is sadly somewhat contradicts the assessment, which I presume came in. Because the application specifically asks, is necessity to remove trees because they pose safety hazard? No. Necessity to remove trees because they're diseased? No. Solar access, need to remove trees which cause meals? The answer is no. So sadly, the application says that. But I would say that the assessment by the tree service indicates that it is a safety hazard due to the fire pit and the power lines, and that there is disease, girdling and bark inclusion. So solar access aside, I think there's reason to remove these trees based on safety and health. And that's the way I would look at it, and I would support removing them on that basis.
Jennifer?
I have a problem with the inspection report. And it's long, somewhat long on observations and very short on conclusions and recommendations. It points out that there are bark seams, but we ended up having to look up what that means. There was no conclusion or recommendation by the arborist because of bark seam. It points out that there's a fire hazard because of the pit, fire pit, but it doesn't say why limbs can't be trimmed back instead of totally taking trees out. And it speaks of the girdling, which looks to be a danger, but it does not say at present whether this is a threat to the safety of the tree and its integrity. It doesn't say anything about the timeline about when this is going to create a real hazard. And if I understand this correctly, the chain is only around one of the 255-inch trees. So if we were to be generous based on this report, we could possibly justify taking down the tree, giving a permit for the 55-inch tree with the chain, but then we have the other over 55-inch tree, which we have not had a statement in this report that it is unsafe. We're all working here. This is my opinion. we're all working here to try to work with a new ordinance. And we're looking things up on Google. We're talking about different ways to interpret solar access. We're trying to make the best of a situation of interpretation. And if we were only basing this decision on this report, I don't think we have evidence to grant the permit. However, I agree that the trees were planted in a wrong place, they're ugly. It's very possible that they are a safety hazard. But I have no way, I'm not an expert, I have no way of coming to an opinion on that. I would rely on this, and I feel this is insufficient. But I will vote with the commission, I will not vote against it, I feel uncertain how to go with this, I'm just not comfortable with it. Okay.
So I think that one of the things that you do is you look at the totality of the evidence. So the evidence has been presented in a number of forms. You've heard from our planner, you've heard from me, you've heard from the applicants. They've provided written testimony of their own, subsequent testimony after the initial application where they brought in an expert who did the report that they did. It is the quality that it is. They've supplemented that with additional testimony, and staff has supplemented, also provided information regarding the terms in that report, in response to questions. So oftentimes you'll find that that evidence might not be perfect, or what you ideally would like to see, but that's the evidence that will allow you to make an informed decision, and you should give it whatever weight or lack of weight you think that it deserves to receive.
I'd like to follow up on one thing that Jennifer said. Actually, it was Eric initially said it. The application doesn't actually declare any of these things, and that concerns me. I think at minimum, we might want to consider having them withdraw and resubmit an application that actually states one of the conditions that requires us to pay attention to. Because it literally says, you said, Peter, that we can use solar, we can do that, but it literally says no. But no, and no.
So that application was submitted, and that's a snapshot in time. So that's the information they had on the date in March that it was submitted. And then everything else that they brought has been supplemental evidence that you could use the supplemental evidence to get to a result of, despite the fact that they initially thought that this wasn't applicable. They've since that time consulted with arborists, or since that time learned more, or they presented that today because they now have a better understanding of this process. And again, we're looking at the term solar access for the first time tonight. City council didn't provide us with any guidance with what they meant as solar access. There is no, as I understand it, there is no appeal of your decision. So you will need to provide us with guidance related to what solar access means, or what the needle dropping means, so that on future applications that may come in, we can better inform those applicants of our understanding of your determinations. So again, we have the totality of evidence, including their testimony, and that is, as sitting as a judge, you need to weigh it and decide, okay, I think that, I can grant this, and here's the reason why. And it's the power lines, or it's the fire pit, or it's the girding, or whatever it is. And as long as, again, precedent, every piece of dirt's different and all the trees are different. But if what we want is consistency kind of around some of these themes. If you said yes based on the fire pit and someone came in with a fire pit that's closer and you said no, that's when we start having problems, because what we want to be able to do is kind of be able to predict how you guys are going to hear these so that we can advise members of the public, because we don't want to waste their time and we don't want to waste your time. And we have clear criteria that would say, well, you can apply this, but in the past, there was a fire pit that was even closer and they didn't find that that was the criteria. So this doesn't seem like, and just inform the people so that they can make a decision about whether to pursue the application or not. And then if city council wants to weigh in at some point and give you guys more guidance as far as some of these criteria, they can, but we don't have this tonight. And so we're asking you to make those determinations.
So
Yeah.
I'm going to talk some. Yes, go ahead, Jennifer.
I just want to know, it sounds like what you're saying is whatever we decide tonight, you want us to be clear about the criteria that we're using.
You have to give a reason. If you decide to accept it, then you have to pick one or multiples of those reasons. You can't just say, I approve it. You have to have a reason. It has to be a clear reason. Anything else?
No, that's it.
This is my problem. Takes about 80 years for those trees to grow. That fire pit looks a lot newer than 80 years old. The flagpole, look, I'm looking in, it's a little rusty. I bet it's not 80 years old. I am 100% sure the cable is not 80 years old. I sat on this committee for 2 years and looked at trees. We worked and we worked and we worked to come up with definitions. This is the first time we've seen this application. We did not see it. I know that when I went to city council, they changed a lot of criteria. That's why we're looking at 55 inches and we're going, where did 55 inches come from? That was a decision that they made. I am very sure that when they talked about solar, they meant solar panels and not sunshine coming in. You know, it's the kind of thing where people want to cut down on the trees on the dunes because they block their view. Well, they knew that they were there. And having heard all the testimony we heard everything we looked at and looked at these trees, the idea was to preserve what trees we have here. And I understand that you're going to, you might take these down and you want to put a lot of smaller trees into your yard that will not grow as high. I guess I have no idea how high those trees actually are. But I can't see in the criteria that we've got to allow you to take down trees, that anything that has been presented tonight would allow that. The fire pit was put in afterwards. I don't know if you put in the fire pit or someone before you put in the fire pit or what, but I mean, fire pits can be moved. And of course, when we get into the summer season anyway, we get restrictions on what fire pits and where you can have them and what's going in, all that kind of thing too. That's just where I kind of look at it. I look at what I heard the people from Earhart who talked about this and how they wanted the trees that we have. I say, yes, Dawn, I think it's a shore pine. And shore pine trees are just what they are. They're ugly. There's not a beauty symmetry to them at all, but they do grow. And so that's my problem. I can't come up with one of those reasons. But that's where I stand. So we need to move on. We've heard, does anyone have anything else to say? Okay. Did you want to say something else, Emerson? No, all right. So, I'm sorry, I've lost it, all my stuff here. Okay, so we've had a discussion. Now we need to make a decision. Do, I have a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Russ is going to make a motion.
I move that we approve the tree removal permit based upon solar access and needle deposits on the roof.
Okay. Russ has made a motion. Do I have a second?
Can we make an amendment to that motion?
You can second it
Okay.
and then make an amendment. Or not second it and let it die for lack of a second.
I'll second that.
Okay, Donna seconded it.
Then
Then we have some discussion.
okay, and I would also like to add the power lines.
You want to amend the motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Amend the motion to include the power line issue with the trees into
Okay.
Russ's motion.
To add that as a safety hazard.
Correct.
Is that correct?
That's yes.
Okay,
So one thing that you could consider is someone could make a motion simply to approve and someone can second it. And then to the people voting yes, if it's majority, you could explain. Because some of you might think that certain factors apply and others might think other factors, because there's multiple ways to get to yes. So instead of including it in the motion,
but the motion's already
it's
made
already
here.
in second. Yeah, I just. Right.
So can
For the
I?
future.
Right, that's exactly what the precedent that, because when you said the power lines and trees in California, they're kind of like, oh, right, and the wind and everything. So
Okay, so Russ's motion was to approve the application as it being, where the trees are, a safety hazard.
The solar access
Okay,
and the.
solar access, okay, number 3. Because of solar access and deposit of needles is what he said. And that was his motion. Are you saying, Dawn, you want to amend that motion to also have safety? I guess that would be a safety hazard. Is that what you're calling the
Correct.
lines, or are you calling it something else?
safety,
Safety, okay.
calling it safety.
All right, so Dawn wants to amend the motion to also let safety hazard there. Do I have a second?
Second.
So Emerson has second. Any discussion on the amendment first? Yes, Eric.
I don't have discussion on the amendment.
Okay. All those in favor of amending the motion first, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. No. Okay, we're back to the original motion with the amendment. You want to say something, Eric?
I'm in favor of removing I appreciate your sentiments on this, and I appreciate your sentiments on all of this. I do, if you good or bad, but it is what it is. Personally, I feel that there's a safety hazard, and I think there's a health hazard. It's not as well stated as we'd like, and we got to look up what one of the health hazards was, but I think there's a health hazard in these trees. But I think the weakest argument is the one that we're going to be voting on, which is needles and solar access. Anybody can claim needles around this town, and if we're going to use needles as an issue, we'll use every tree in town. And I think that's a challenging precedent to stay to, and also the solar access, because it is ambiguous. And so I would like to support removing these trees, but not on the basis of this motion.
Okay.
And so personally, I hope people who want that, well, I'm gonna have to vote no on this. But if it goes down, I will make a new motion that they remove on the basis of safety and health, which I think has more standing in this case.
And you can do that.
Right, so that's where I stand, and I'll be voting against this motion. I'd like to see these trees removed.
Okay, yes, Don?
Is there an opportunity for, say, Russ to withdraw that motion?
No, there isn't. There's an opportunity for you to vote no and have a new motion put in. But we can't withdraw it. Yes.
And let me make clear.
I'll just, yes,
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead, Eric.
if we do vote this down, a new motion can be struck.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
I'm just trying to keep it Robert's rule.
Sure. I just want to make sure that it wasn't, like.
No.
you know,
No. Any other discussion? Okay,
When is the appropriate time to add conditions of approval?
when you make the motion. Because what happens is that Garrett needs to then do a report. And he will say, the application was approved for this reason. Okay, because of safety, or because of this, or he'll say, it was not approved.
No, I meant conditions related to the size of the trees that are gonna replace it, et cetera.
Oh, when the motion's made, when the motion is made. So maybe that's something that if Eric is going to put a new motion in, he might think about. The size of the trees in your motion, as a condition.
Without the requiring.
Right,
Oh.
with the condition,
Condition. that-
with the condition, yes,
Gotcha,
yes.
okay.
Okay, all right, so we have Russ's motion, we've had it second, we've amended it. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
2 ayes, all those opposed say no.
No,
Emerson? Did
I
you-
said aye.
You said aye, okay, I'm sorry, there were 3 ayes.
So
Don was an aye, Emerson was an aye, Russ was an aye, is that correct?
Yeah.
All right, and, all right, you got it. All right, Eric, would you like to make a motion?
Okay, so I will move that we approve the application to remove these trees. On the basis of the fact that they're a safety hazard with regard to the fire pit and the power lines. And that they have evidence of disease. And that they can be removed on the condition that the plans that have been presented to us for keeping new hawthorn trees in their place will be done.
So Eric has made a new motion. Yeah, who seconded? I'm sorry, Russ second, okay, I'm sorry, Russ, you're back around. All right. Do we have further discussion? Yes, Don?
Doesn't the ordinance say what the minimum size of replanting is, like 10 gallon, or does the ordinance say that?
It
Yes.
says, it doesn't require you to condition planting. Like you can approve this without requiring that planting plan be implemented. But if you do, the ordinance does say that if you do require plantings, they should be 10-gallon size. I forget if it's.
It's on page 5 of 6.
Yeah.
The plan, it says the replacement of trees proposed for removal of trees of a suitable type, size and location. Replacement trees must measure at minimum 5 feet tall for evergreen trees and 10-gallon size for deciduous plants. And they have put in their application that they are going to plant 22. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. We're on discussion. Yes, John,
Okay.
I'm going to sleep here. Yes, go ahead.
So, is it appropriate to amend Eric's
Yeah.
application to require that their submission be part of the conditions? In other words, that this is what they have to do.
I think that's what he said.
That's what he said.
Yeah,
I said on the condition that the plan that they presented is implemented.
Thank you.
Yes, okay.
Yep.
All right.
Not necessary.
All right. Any further discussion?
Could it be stated again, please, the whole motion?
The motion is to approve the application based on trees pose a safety hazard
From both the fire pit.
from
and-
fire pit and
and the
the
power.
power lines. And the condition is that they implement their plan presented in their application.
She also mentioned disease.
Oh, and disease, okay. And disease.
Yep.
She would have a far clearer one when it comes out, but that's, okay. All right. Once again, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Nay. Two of us. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. It has been approved. If you would like to leave now, or you could stay for a discussion about the FEMA plan.
Oh, okay.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
I am curious, just a question though.
Yes.
What is the fine for someone that cuts down the tree that does not meet the requirements of the permit? I'm just
Jazz
curious.
Suite comes and lives in your house.
Put you in the small room. And they're all small.
I believe it's $500 per occurrence.
Not that we would ever do that.
No.
I mean, we've, I think we've been good stewards of the property,
Please don't.
so.
You
but
sit
thank
on a major, you sit on a major street.
you. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Have a nice evening.
right, we'll wait a minute for Dawn to return.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
By Dawn's gone, this is a side note here, since you didn't have this in our hand when you ended, Chad. It looks like you're taking, spend lots of time with the tree.
I'm sometimes thankful to be out of the office on a nice day.
I think.
It's been busy, and that's probably conservative because that doesn't include the time of the front desk ladies answering questions and things. And it doesn't include much of Angela's time, but she's been assisting me, but for the most part, it's fairly conservative estimate.
Yeah, I mean, you could add a 0 to my time, and I think you can still do well.
Yeah, getting through it. Things are getting,
And Garrett too.
yeah, I added a little bit of time for them, but it's just a basic.
And we just had to think about it.
Should we send some information back to the city council about the solar thing? I don't want that coming up again. I think it was unambiguous what they intended, but you exposed some ambiguity to it.
Yeah, no, we looked back. We actually looked back through all the city council meetings because we were trying to figure out the ambiguity. And the solar issue was never addressed. And, I just,
Perhaps you could have-
this process has not been ideal, as we've been working with this for a very, very long time. And edits have been made at different times and, it's tough to be this far in and have. Yeah, I mean, the amount of time we spent on this and still be at a point where your planner and attorney are reading it and coming to opposite conclusions, so.
You do realize it has been over 3 years since the planning commission first looked at it?
I do realize,
Good.
because I have
I do
spent more
too.
time on this ordinance than many other things.
I mean, this hearing is a result of the messiness, in my opinion, of the way it was written in the whole process. And
Yeah, I mean, I just.
Do you want that on the minutes?
Fine. The city council is gonna hear about this. I mean, believe me, they're gonna hear it.
I think that when they take down the trees, because they are in a very centralized location here, there is going to be things said possibly, but It's not, we worked very hard for over 2 years to come up with a reasonable tree process and plan and everything, and you know, it didn't work so well. But we were best, and we've done our best we could tonight. We've listened to everyone. Okay, so we have one more public hearing tonight. I will open public hearing on, I'm sorry, I've got pieces of paper all over the place here. Where did it go? Yeah, I lost it. File 25-01 ZTA zoning text amendment. This is to replace all existing text of the Gerhardt zoning ordinance flood hazard overlay zone with new text to meet minimum national flood insurance program requirements identified in the 2023 community assistance visit and identified by FEMA as Endangered Species Act pre-implementation compliance measures, PICM. I will ask, since we are having a public hearing and that, I've read the statement. Do you have any conflict of interest or ex parte contact or personal bias?
No.
Hearing none, does the audience feel there are any challenges to the commission's ability to make an impartial decision? No. Garrett, it is your turn.
All right, thanks. Okay, so I'll try to keep it as brief as possible, and then we can dive in with questions and deliberation as much as you want afterwards. The two basic goals of what we're doing with these amendments are, one, to meet basic flood safety and risk reduction requirements that we have been missing in our zoning ordinance for at least a few years. So that's one side, is we're catching up with basic flood hazard safety issues in our zoning ordinance that DLCD and FEMA identified a while back. And we decided we'd try to combine the correction to that issue with the Endangered Species Act PICM changes. And that's what the second goal is to comply with FEMA's requirements to implement the Endangered Species Act to protect salmon in floodplains. Communities throughout Oregon are being required to do this. And they're all supposed to adopt an ordinance like this by July 31st of this year. And so I just want to keep those two goals in mind. And if somehow the conversation goes in a direction where we don't want to quite move ahead with the FEMA Endangered Species Act requirements quite yet, I will encourage Planning Commission to find a way for us to move forward with the basic safety requirements anyway. I think we've waited long enough for those. So in any case, the amendments, again, they replace the entire flood hazard overlay zone text with Oregon's model flood hazard overlay zone text, and some additional changes that FEMA has said are required. The amendments do not change the geographic area that the overlay zone applies to. So it's not changing the boundaries of where anyone is subject to floodplain permits or the regulations in the overlay zone. It's just changing what the rules are within that area. When you look at the draft ordinance that's in your packet, again, that represents all of the language that will replace what's currently in the flood hazard overlay zone. And the language that's highlighted in yellow, most of which is towards the end of the draft amendments, that's the text that's highlighted in yellow is the text that the purpose of that is to meet the Endangered Species Act PICM requirements. The text that is not highlighted in yellow is oriented towards meeting the basic flood risk reduction safety requirements that FEMA has and that we've been behind on for a few years. And I'll speak a little bit more to the PICM, the Endangered Species Act requirements now. So just to give you the briefest overview, there's basically 3 broad categories of standards that will be applicable in floodplains after adopting the ordinance when it comes to Endangered Species Act. So one is that trees that are larger than 6 inches in diameter, if they are cut down, they will need to be replaced according to the mitigation ratios that are in the ordinance. We already have some protections for trees in wetlands, for example, like you just can't cut down trees in wetlands, but outside of the wetlands, if you're outside of wetlands, but in the floodplain, under this, you will have to replace those trees. So that's number one, is tree protection in the flood hazard overlay. Number 2 is that when you add impervious surfaces, surfaces that are impervious to rain infiltrating into the ground, like driveways or roof area, you either have to remove an equivalent amount of impervious surface from somewhere else in the floodplain, or more practically, you have to manage the stormwater from that surface with something like an open area that can infiltrate that rainwater into the soil. That will be the case often, I think, in Gearhart, given the size of lots that are developed here, as opposed to in Portland or a highly urbanized area where you would often need like an engineered stormwater facility that involves concrete and plumbing. So that's the second one. We have trees so far, and then managing your stormwater so that it's not carrying pollutants directly into streams. The third one is that when you add fill material, any kind of material to the floodplain, you have to remove an equivalent amount of material from the floodplain. So the idea here is that if you are adding earth material into the floodplain, or you're adding posts or a foundation that supports your house, literally the volume of that material is volume that, about once every 100 years, when the floodplain fills with water, that's fish habitat that's no longer available to fish. And this is as a matter of principle, this is the part of it that's hardest for me to sort of support and understand where FEMA is coming from and why they're doing this. But basically, if you're adding any kind of building materials or earth material into that floodplain volume, you have to remove an equivalent amount from somewhere else in the floodplain, so that you're not taking away habitat that's available to fish every 100 years or so. That's all specified in the standards and in the mitigation ratio table at the end of the ordinance. There is some difference between what you have to do if you're within 175 feet of the stream that is the source of flooding versus if you're further than 175 feet. This is a very rough approximation by FEMA that basically says if you're removing trees, adding impervious surfaces, or taking away floodplain volume closer to the creek, that means more impacts to salmon, and you're going to have higher mitigation ratios. And so you have to replant more trees and manage the stormwater better, or remove more volume to compensate for what you're taking away. And so that's a broad overview of the standards for FEMA PICM. I think there's one outstanding issue that we need to look into more before there's final adoption of the ordinance, and that's clear and objective standards for residential development. So in Oregon, residential development, when we get a building permit application with a site plan, a floodplain development permit, we're only supposed to apply standards to that development that are clear and objective. And I think that adopting the ordinance as it is will be could be troublesome with meeting that state law. There's other cities throughout Oregon that are working on this as we speak, and I'm tracking a few of them that seem to be farthest along to see what kind of solutions they're coming up with to make the standards more clear and objective. And I'm interested to see what they do. We have until July 31st to have this in order. I think a couple of other notes are that what happens after July 31st, for example, if we were a little bit late, is that at some time, I can't predict when, FEMA would schedule another community assistance visit with DLCD and us to notify us that we're not in compliance and to outline the ways that we are not. And then sometime after that visit occurs, we could have our participation in the National Flood Insurance Program suspended. It's not something that happens right away. I would say though that if somebody comes in with a development permit application on August 15th, and we don't have this in place, that's problematic for staff, and it could put the city in a position of having to explain itself to FEMA and put its flood insurance program participation in jeopardy in the future. So I am recommending that we try to address this and get it adopted as soon as possible. But I think we have a little bit of wiggle room to work with any issues you identify or that City Council identifies, and to make a couple of improvements with regards to clear and objective standards for residential development. Let's see. We've had one piece of written testimony, I think, that we've received that just asked clarifying questions about how the standards were applied to a single property. That was from, I think it's Jeff Strange. We've also solicited input from FEMA and DLCD to confirm whether the draft ordinance as it's written right now is acceptable or would be acceptable to them, and they've said that it is in writing. And that's where we stand with it right now. So look forward to answering questions and getting your direction on whether we should move forward with the whole thing and work on issues with City Council, or whether you want to recommend that we move forward with City Council just adopting the basic safety standards that are not highlighted in yellow, and that you want to work on clear and objective standards, for example, before moving that forward. So we would, the idea is we would have we could continue to June if you wanted to, date certain, the June hearing, June Planning Commission meeting, and still have time for a City Council adoption in July before the July 31st deadline, just to give you a little sense of that. I'm going to leave it at that for now, and happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, Garrett, the draft document you gave us, it's a lot of heavy reading.
Yeah.
For myself personally, to go through it and pick it apart, I'm not able to. Are you expecting tonight that we as a group discuss this and pick it apart? Or are we? I'm not clear, maybe I'm the only one that's not clear, I'm sorry, but I'm not clear what you're expecting us to do.
Yeah, so again, it's a model ordinance that all of the text that's not highlighted was developed through a process at Department of Land Conservation and Development with stakeholders from local government. And the idea is that you're not supposed to have to pick it apart too much in terms of making changes. Although you absolutely have the authority, and it's reasonable to the extent that you want to pick it apart and ask questions about any detail that you want to. But they're the basic standards, and they're used by many communities throughout Oregon, and work well enough for them. And then when it comes to the text that's highlighted in yellow by FEMA, they created that without DLCD's input, without the state of Oregon's input, and rather quickly. Again, like you can ask questions to understand how that would work, but they have said that FEMA has said that text in yellow is really what you need to have here, and they want it to be, they want the final result to be as close to that as possible. So if we have a reason to change something, we can propose changing it, and that's fine. So yeah, I mean, you guys can pick it apart tonight. If you're gonna pick it apart, I would encourage us to start picking it apart sooner than later. If you want me to go through the draft amendment, the draft flood hazard overlay zone, and sort of give you some highlights of what's in there and some of the important parts, I'm happy to do that. But the idea is it's supposed to be a mostly finished product created by the state of Oregon and FEMA, and they want us to just adopt it. And you don't have to do it that way if you don't want to.
Okay, all right. All right. I will defer to our lawyer first.
So
Then John will get you.
the DLCD model language is something that I think the expectation would be that these are changes that need to be made to bring us in conformance with state law. This FEMA, the whole FEMA process has been kind of a wild ride. The governor asked FEMA to pause this. They said they wouldn't. That was last year. I recently heard from an elected official who's been in close contact with Representative Pence's office. And they indicated to him that this whole FEMA program was going away. And I don't know whether that's true or possible. This was the result of a lawsuit in Oregon. But I could very easily see them saying that this is not a priority anymore. So that's all I would have to say. Legally, the issue that Garrett brought up about clear and objective standards for land use, I agree with him. That gives me a lot of concern. He reached out to FEMA and asked them for help, trying to on how can we comply with the state law and with these federal standards, and they said they weren't going to weigh on anything related to Oregon laws. So you can do this tonight, or we could wait until June and see if we get clear guidance from FEMA that they're withdrawing it. Again, given the priorities of the prior administration and the current administration, it seems like this is something that might get pulled.
Okay. Yeah, John, I'm gonna take John first, I'll get you, Eric.
Yes, I don't know if I have a different version of this than other people, but
You have the one that's given to all in our packet.
I think it's the same version of everybody else, but all this black, red, purple, italics, none of that exists in the version that I've got.
You don't have the greeny yellow at the end?
I have yellow, which is kind of green, but
Yeah,
I don't have any red or purple.
you'll see red in some real strange places.
Like, give me a page number.
Oh, the first page. First page, City of Gerhart or something.
Second bullet point.
Second.
It's
bullet.
hard to tell it in this light.
Yeah, I don't, what's red?
This is what you need.
Oh, really? I don't see that spread at all. So that was one question. And it seems as if what we're hearing,
This.
it seems as if what we're hearing is that there's a whole bunch of this.
Oh my gosh. Does that help?
That it seems like there's a whole bunch of this that's black. That we're getting recommendations from both our planner and our attorney that we should move ahead with that. Because that's some basic level of housekeeping that we should have done a long time ago and we should catch up. And it's only the stuff that I can see, which is this green, that is the FEMA stuff, is that correct? So if we said excise all the green and approve all the rest, we would have accomplished that first step that you're recommending, is that correct, both Garrett?
If you wanna move forward with the Oregon spot tonight and you wanna hold off on the FEMA until the June meeting, because, you know, we think the last thing I want is for us to adopt an ordinance and then us to unadopt
That's
an
exactly my
ordinance.
point.
Because the Endangered Species Act was not a priority of our current administration. The person I talked to has a great relationship with both Representative Bentz and his chief of staff, Nick Strader. And
Where's Ben's from?
he's the representative from Eastern Oregon.
Oh, okay.
That was the seat that Greg Walden had for many years.
Okay.
So every reason to think that they have a pretty good lines of communication with the administration and the current FEMA director. And if they're saying he said he's gonna pull the whole thing, that in my mind, that's enough reason to kick this can down the road a month. If we get something, because I think that seems pretty likely, we still, if we have clarity by then that they're not gonna move forward with this, then no harm, no foul. If we don't, we still have time to discuss it in June and get it to the council for the July implementation. The standard that FEMA has said was good faith compliance. We've spent a ton of time on this. We've been communicating with FEMA and the state. I mean, I would want it adopted by July if we need to adopt it, but I think we've got a pretty strong record of compliance. So I don't think they would schedule a cancellation that set it on a mess with people's FEMA insurance either. But
Peter, would you recommend we proceed?
yeah, I
with the other
recommend
aspect of it?
proceed with the Oregon and then we hold off on the FEMA.
Why not do it all?
Well, Russ, let me call you off because she doesn't know who's talking. So Russ?
Yeah, Russ is saying, why not do it all? I mean, we still have homes that wanna have insurance based upon the FEMA policies. And the FEMA thing, despite the administration, is gonna probably go to litigation to determine whether the executive or the legislative gets to decide this stuff. If we have it in place, then it's in place.
If it's in place and it causes someone not to be able to develop a lot that otherwise is developable and it's not required by FEMA and we've adopted it based on the fact that it's a FEMA requirement, that's where we have the issue. The issue of 175 feet from the bank is, I think the assumption was that the elevation of the property is, the top of the bank is, relatively close to the river. If you think about like the Grand Canyon, 175 feet from the top of the bank is,
Desert.
right, so the reason the governor asked FEMA to pause this is because this creates issues between federal and state law that cause us to not comply with one or not comply with the other. Federal preemption normally wins out. But yeah, I mean, we were supposed to have this draft language in August of last year. And it got delayed and got delayed and got delayed, and then they put us on a clock. And now they might be pulling the whole thing. And if you guys want to adopt it tonight, you can.
I know Eric has something, but I know the acting director of FEMA was marched out the door today. So they don't have a director anymore.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, I mean, DLCD's floodplain staff has been cut in half from 2 to 1, and the Region 10 FEMA office floodplain team has been reduced from 10 to 2. I mean, we just don't know, right? The idea though is that they have given us the deadline. Like Peter says, I think it's reasonable to wait. Even if you recommended approval to City Council, we would not be recommending that City Council make a final decision at their June meeting, right? And even this idea I expressed about like we really want to move ahead with the basic black text state requirements. I didn't mean that to say like we have to have a decision on that from City Council in June. Like it's just if we're gonna delay or have some tolerance for uncertainty with the FEMA stuff for 6 months, I want to separate the black text and move ahead with that before then, right? But we don't have to you don't have to recommend moving ahead with the model ordinance right now from the state of Oregon and just try to separate them by
why not let City Council be the ones to separate FEMA from the Oregon text? If it's gonna come back to us, then it just
Because we have to have a public hearing. We are in a public hearing right now.
No, I understand that. So if we approve it all,
Yeah.
then City Council, if they make the ultimate decision anyway. So then City Council says, well, we're not ready to do FEMA yet. We're gonna do the black text.
That's also
And
fine.
out of our hands,
Yeah.
City Council makes the call and.
Yeah, if you want to recommend that it go to City Council, and just note in your recommendation that the clear and objective standards need to be worked on some more. So it wouldn't be like an unqualified endorsement of the text as it is. It's fine to pass it on to City Council.
Well, I'm just wanting to get this
You just want to
out the door. But whatever we all decide to do.
Okay, Eric, I know that you had some things to say.
Thanks. Garrett, with regard to the clear and objective standards for residential development, does that pertain to the PICM or does that pertain to the basic safety standards?
It pertains to all all standards related to residential development. Yeah.
So even if we were to recommend approval of the basic safety standards, the black text, we still have some lack of clarity or ambiguity with regard to clear and objective standards, even in the black. Okay.
Yeah. Those standards are endorsed by the state of Oregon and are in the clear on the clear and objective front.
Okay, so the clear and objective issue has only to do with the pre-implementation compliant features.
That's right.
Okay, that was what I was trying to get at. I have a couple just bookkeeping things on the draft ordinance itself. I don't know if this is the time to bring them up.
Go ahead.
Okay, so Angelina might be able to take care of this. There's some, this had nothing to do with the true content. This is just like edited. On page 14 of 40, there's a numbering problem. It should be, 3.10.72 should be 3.10.3.72. We're missing a 3 there. 3.10.3.72.
There's a number of typos. Do we want to get into that right now?
I don't know, that's what I was asking.
Garrett, do you want to address the typos or? Okay,
Or just deal with the
let,
substance.
let me ask you this. I don't know how everyone's feeling.
Okay.
If we said, okay, if we decide to have more clarity by June, in between now and then, anyone that's gone through and found typos or just clarity could send them to Angelina and she could fix them.
Sure, yeah, I have to do that.
And because the other problem is Angelina doesn't have the document sitting right here to fix it.
So,
We could do that but.
Yeah.
We need to kind of decide what we're
Okay.
gonna do.
that's,
Let's decide what we're gonna do and then we can take care of
okay,
that.
I'll address my thoughts on that. I think we should table the PICM issues right now. I think there's too much uncertainty on whether that's going to be required. In spite of Russ's thoughts that we should just handle it all, I think that adds a measure of complexity to our discussion that may be moot going forward. And I think we should just deal with the basic safety issues, basic safety measures that represents black text and discuss and either approve or reject that and only deal with that tonight. That's what I think.
Anyone else? Yeah, Don.
Garrett, is this the same document that we were going to vote on at the January meeting? Or has it been changed?
We made some changes. We updated the numbering scheme. And we also made an edit to provide a pathway for applicants to demonstrate that there really are not fish that could be impacted by their development, even under a 100-year flood condition. And that's really uncertain how that would play out in reality and when that would be applicable. We'd be looking for the experience of other communities and how it plays out there. Communities that process multiple floodplain permits per month, for example, right? There's gonna be a lot of lessons learned right away. Those are the only two changes.
So, I think my feeling was we were prepared to actually pass this on in January, but there was a storm, and as the acting chair at that time with Chad decided that this issue was maybe just a little more complex to do on Zoom. So that's how it got pushed back to us, and that has put us 4 months behind, I think. This is going to be approved or not approved by the city council. Some of our experience with the city council is you spend many hours on these type of issues, and then they take their own views and opinions and do what they want to them, but that's their prerogative. And in something like this, if we could parse this as much as we wanted, and it could go to city council, they could just do something like that, in which they should do that. But if Peter and Garrett have used the state of Oregon language and the FEMA language in here that's required, I don't know how much we actually do want to change us, especially if the final decision is by the council. So that what I agree with what Russ is saying, that gives the council, you don't think they're gonna have deliberations on this? That gives them one extra meeting, that'd be a June meeting and then a July meeting to go over it, and then they would have the clarity from whether FEMA exists then or not, or is gonna pursue it. That Garrett and Peter could then explain to them, the people who are ultimately making the decision, minus the typo, maybe on our own time, we could present to Angelina and she could correct that. But if we are on a bit of a time crunch and we're unsure on some stuff, they've done a really good job of putting this together. Let's get it into the hands of the people who are going to make the decision. That's what I have to say.
Okay, Don, thank you, John.
I disagree. I believe that what we should do is submit or send the black text only to the city council. While you're correct that they can do what they want with it, why give them a more complex document than is necessary? We have no idea what FEMA is gonna do with us in the next month or two. The FEMA stuff should be left out, in my opinion, at this stage, but let's get the black text to them. And they can decide not to do anything if they chose to wait for FEMA. So at least we're done with the black text. And we can deal with FEMA issues later, take them up. That'd be my recommendation.
Could I ask, I think that the theme, everything except the yellow is FEMA, I think it's not just the black, is that correct?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask too.
I think what
I
you're
should say everything but the green.
everything but the green.
Yeah.
Yes,
or
but
yellow.
it's green on ours and yellow on yours, it's very green on ours.
Yeah, that's what I should say, is everything but the
I
green.
think is that correct?
Garrett, that's a question to you, is that correct?
Yes, the yellow or green highlighting is the language that you would be leaving out.
Chartreuse.
Yeah, and then there's a few different text colors and you, yeah, if you want city council to move ahead with the basic standards, then it would include all those colors.
That's what you
Just not-
everything but the green. Green.
Chartreuse.
Churches.
Very French.
one other question.
Just let me see if Emerson's got something, I'll get to you the rest.
I think I'm in favor of what's just been proposed. I would send the, everything but the yellow or green highlighted material to the city council, because it looks like that should be approved right away. And we can then continue to work on this and send it to them, to the city council later
See what
for
happened.
their own incorporation.
Okay, and Russ?
Well, the only question I had about, and I don't disagree with the separation between the black and the yellow green. What about flood insurance? What's gonna, I mean, part of the urgency a few months back was to make sure we had flood insurance for those homes that were down in the appropriate areas or the affected areas. Is if FEMA disappears, it's canceled as an agency, what happens to flood insurance for those homeowners?
You still buy it.
Good question.
You still buy it from the
It just
insurance
cost me
company.
10 grand instead of.
That's right. It isn't subsidized by FEMA.
I got you. Okay. All right, well, I'm all in for separating them out.
All right. And Eric? Are
I
you,
said my piece.
okay, and Jennifer?
I just want to clarify, I want to separate them out, just do the non-FEMA, but can we still do typos? Correct.
Yes,
I
yeah.
think if you have typos and you just send them to Angelina, that would be probably far more efficient than going through every page of the document. Fine.
So we can recommend it tonight and still. send it.
Yeah,
you can-
with, to have the scrivener's errors, all the typos, scrivener errors, and if the motion is to send it with the understanding that people are going to provide the scrivener's errors that they find to Angelina and Garrett, so that those are fixed prior to it going to council.
Okay. Yes, sir.
So I just want to make clarification for everybody's sake. We're making this distinction in the text that the yellow is FEMA stuff and the other stuff isn't, but that's not accurate. Because even the black text is FEMA required basic safety issues. And the yellow text is just the pre-implementation for the endangered species
Yes.
issues.
Yes.
But all of it relates to.
We're using FEMA as shorthand for that.
Yeah, but I want to make sure we
It's
didn't
an-
have any misunderstanding
it's an
that it's
important
all compliant. FEMA's requirements, all of it,
It's in particular.
not just the yellow.
Okay, so let me clarify. Garrett, if we were to make a motion to recommend to the city council to adopt that text, which is in black, red, purple, and blue. And we left the yellow, green text alone, then say you find out between now and June that yes, it's still going forward, then would you bring back that part to us then?
Yeah, I mean, my outlook on it is that it seems like there's a lot of ways in which the salmon related text could be, those requirements could go away. But if they
Okay.
haven't gone away by June, I would be asking you to make a recommendation to city council to deal with those and have them adopt them in July. And we'd be ready, you know, at the drop of a bucket plus public notice requirements, to repeal it with you. As soon as
Okay.
we find out it's not happening, but I don't want to be in a position in December trying to explain to DLCD and FEMA why we let a development go ahead without meeting those standards when we did have a year knowing that July 31st was the deadline.
Okay. So we've had Garrett's opinion, we've heard from Peter, we've all heard. I'm in a public hearing, we need to come to a conclusion. Do I have a motion?
I move that we submit to city council all of the text in this document excluding the chartreuse. And that's the motion. Simple as that.
Okay, so what you are recommending, the city council, the amendments in. Will be very clear. Black, red, purple, and blue.
And italics if there are any.
I don't know about, oh, italics. And italics. Okay,
Do we want,
is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Yes, sir.
do we want to give that text a title such as that represents basic safety standards?
Is there a term for those?
No, because we're.
It'd be
in public
the
hearing.
model Oregon floodplain ordinance without Pickham standards would be a way to refer to it.
Model floodplain ordinance.
Okay, that's the motion, right, in the model floodplain Oregon
Model.
Ordinance without Pickham stand.
without Pickham standard. Did you get that? Good,
Ordinance without.
She
okay,
had that from.
That is my motion.
that's your motion.
I second that.
We have a second, Eric has seconded, do we have any further discussion?
That we're adding Scrivener stuff.
Oh, and we will,
Yeah, that's
scriveners
implied.
is implied, please send that email, those emails with it to Angelina within the next few days so she can fix it. Any further discussion? None. All those in favor say aye. All opposed say nay. Okay, it's unanimous, we have finally, we're moving ahead, folks. We don't have any unfinished business, we have no new business.
Did the minutes of the last meeting get approved?
Yes, we did that in our consent agenda.
Oh,
Did you have something?
I found one typo.
Okay.
We'll just call it a scrivener's error and fix that.
Tell you honestly, you can send those typo errors to Angelina before the meeting, and it can be fixed before we even get here. Okay, any other information anyone would like to pass along? Any concerns? Do we have any questions for Peter tonight? He does not want.
This is my favorite agenda item. I tell other cities about this. I'm like, the Gerhart Planning Commission has an agenda item that says questions for land use attorney. And I just need to keep my head on a swivel. And they all laugh. But
Do you want me
I
to
do
cross that
enjoy it.
off? You want me to
No,
put it
I
in?
like it. Sometimes you guys do have questions for me and it's important and it allows me to get you guys information. So I like it.
Okay, so it is 7:57 and our meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Anyone know when they can't be stopped?
The last thing that they said, all these are.
Thank you.
Somebody,
very much.
somebody that.
We're just happy. I've had so many papers. I'm going like, where?
After a lot of decline.
I was.
A little bump.
Thinware and ask.
What's wrong?
If you're a fixer.
I called him Monday.
Where? Oh, it's still finished. Yeah, that's a cool story. That's a very cool story.
Yeah, I felt.
Yeah.
Very plans and architecture of what it was like, or what it was.
Okay, that's good enough.
And, you know, just trying to improve their property.
Good night, everybody.
So sympathetic to these people, they're just trying to.
Even if they.
Yeah.
They start doing it.
Yeah.
All right, pick up your typo.
All right, Chad.
Page
I don't know.
three.
That's for Frank, Jennifer.
No, I'm gonna first thing in the morning. Yeah.
Oh, I did wonder.
Thanks for
Good night.
Take
Good
care.
night. That's a,
Angelina?
she was not for us.
Just right in the same.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'd already counted on, it's only getting enough.
I know, it's like enough already.
I didn't read it.
Do we, the meeting's over, but is there anything coming up in June?
Anything coming up in June? There's some. Well, I don't need them, do you want them?
Yeah, I'll take it.
You always, you send the,
Oh my goodness. Do we have, well, it depends, Terry Goldenberg, this is his last chance.
Oh,
to get
God.
his stuff, he wants to do a street vacate. I don't know if it's gonna come, but that one will be in June if he gets the information together in time.
where's he gonna do it?
Behind, just right up here.
Oh,
the-
oh, that's, we've had that before, didn't
It was on there once and got taken off, wasn't it? Or-
I think so.
I remember that.
Yeah.
It was like January or February or something. Or March.
How did it come up in this? Well, I know it was being discussed about there's
I don't think. it
the
was-
water going through there and there's a road there and there's,
Yeah.
and it doesn't,